Eala has already made headlines with a racket in her hand. But this time there was no match, no trophy, and no scoreboard. Just one magazine cover, and suddenly fans across the Philippines were losing their minds. So, why does Alex becoming Metro's new cover star feel like something much bigger than fashion? Because the image captured a change that had already been happening in public. For most of her career, fans have seen Alex in motion, chasing down a ball, resetting after an error, fighting to protect a service game. On a tennis court, everything is urgent. Her body language is built around the next decision, and the scoreboard keeps judging those decisions in real time. The Metro cover presented the opposite image. Stillness, control. A young woman looking directly into the camera, occupying the center of the frame as if she had always belonged there. That contrast is what makes the image land. This was not simply an athlete trading tennis clothes for designer fashion. It was the public seeing Alex in a new position, not as a prospect waiting for her breakthrough, not as a promising teenager being introduced to a larger audience, as the main event. Metro framed the feature as a homecoming. That word matters. A homecoming is not only about returning to a place. It is about returning after something has changed. The person comes back with a different status, and the people watching recognize that difference. Alex returned to the Philippines no longer carrying only potential. She was ranked inside the world's top 30, with the official WTA list placing her at number 29. She had already built a season strong enough to change the way the tennis world evaluated her. That does not mean she had completed the journey. Far from it. But she had crossed an important line. There is a difference between being followed because people hope you will succeed and being followed because you have already shown that you can compete at the highest level. Hope is built around the future. Belief is built around evidence. That is why the cover felt timely rather than premature. Metro was not trying to convince the public that Alex mattered. The audience had already made that decision. The magazine was capturing what her rise had come to represent, and that representation extends beyond tennis. For decades, the Philippines has produced athletes capable of generating enormous national pride. But global tennis has rarely provided Filipino fans with a player they could follow from week to week at the highest level of the women's tour. That creates a different emotional relationship. When Alex enters a major draw, fans are not simply checking the result of another professional player. Many are watching a barrier being tested in real time. Can a Filipino player stay inside the world's elite? Can she become a regular presence on the biggest courts? Can her success make tennis feel less distant to the next generation? Those questions travel with her. So when Metro placed Alex on its cover, fans were not reacting only to the styling. They were reacting to visibility. They saw a Filipina athlete being presented not as a novelty, not as a feel-good side story, but as a cultural figure important enough to carry the entire feature. That distinction is easy to miss. A sports page tells you what an athlete did. A mainstream cover tells you the athlete now means something to people who may not follow every match. That is the shift happening around Eala. Her public identity is beginning to move beyond scores and rankings. People are interested in how she speaks, how she carries herself, how she represents the Philippines, and what her rise says about ambition in a country without a deep tradition of producing top-ranked tennis players. None of that replaces the tennis. The tennis made it possible. But the cover revealed that her audience is no longer limited to tennis fans. And this is where the story becomes more interesting than a celebrity photo shoot. Plenty of athletes appear in magazines. Not every appearance creates this level of emotional investment. The difference is not the clothing. It is the meaning the audience brings to the image. Fans remember the pressure Alex had to absorb. They remember when she was still discussed mainly as a future possibility. They remember the distance between junior success and surviving on the professional tour. Now, they're seeing that same player presented with the confidence of someone whose place in the conversation has already been established. The cover did not make Alexa star. It showed that the definition of her stardom had changed. She was no longer being watched only for what she might accomplish with a racket. She was becoming a symbol of what Filipino athletic excellence could look like on a global stage. And that raises the real question. What transforms a rising tennis player into a cultural figure whose influence can move across sport, fashion, and national identity? The answer begins with results. But results alone do not explain what is happening here. Results provide credibility. They do not automatically create connection. The professional tour is full of highly ranked players who remain almost invisible outside tennis. They win matches, collect points, and build respected careers, but they never become emotionally important to a wider public. Eala is moving in a different direction because several forces are beginning to align around her at the same time. The first is performance, not because one result turned her into an overnight sensation, but because the evidence has started to form a pattern. Reaching the top 30 tells opponents, tournament organizers, sponsors, and fans that a player is no longer operating at the edge of the tour. She is part of the competitive center. That matters because tennis is ruthless about separating attention from substance. A player can trend after one upset. She can dominate social media for a weekend, but the rankings eventually ask a harder question. Can she keep winning across different surfaces, different countries, and different conditions? Alex has advanced far enough for the conversation around her to change. People are no longer asking whether she has professional-level talent. They are asking how high that talent can take her. That is a much more serious question. But performance is only the foundation. The cover became powerful because it revealed a side of Alex that match broadcasts rarely have time to show. During competition, viewers see concentration. They see tension in the shoulders, quick footwork, and the emotional reset between points. Her identity is compressed into a sequence of athletic problems. Can she defend the backhand corner? Can she take time away from the opponent? Can she hold her nerve when the score tightens? The Metro images removed those problems from the frame. What remained was presence. That stillness created a new kind of authority. Alex did not look like an athlete temporarily visiting the fashion world. She looked comfortable enough to make the fashion world adjust to her. That is a subtle difference, but audiences feel it. The strongest sports photography does not disguise the athlete. It translates the qualities people already recognize. Discipline becomes precision. Competitive intensity becomes eye contact. Physical confidence becomes posture. The camera is no longer documenting movement, but the same inner control can still be visible. That is why the cover worked. Did not present a manufactured personality disconnected from the player fans knew. It offered another expression of the same composure. It also challenged an old and exhausting expectation placed on female athletes. Women in sports are often pushed into a false choice. Be serious enough to earn respect, but approachable enough to attract attention. Be powerful, but not intimidating. Be stylish, but never allow style to make people question your commitment. There is no correct way to satisfy that standard because the standard contradicts itself. The better response is not to choose one acceptable identity. It is to refuse the limitation. Alex can be relentless during a baseline exchange and poised in front of a camera. One does not cancel the other. The cover matters partly because it gives fans permission to see a female athlete as a complete public figure rather than forcing her into one narrow role. Then comes the most important layer, representation. Alex is not the first Filipino athlete to become famous. That is not the point. Her significance comes from where she is creating that visibility. Tennis remains one of the most international and individually demanding sports in the world. There is no national league system carrying a player through a season. No teammates to distribute pressure. No guaranteed home schedule. Every week can involve another city, another surface, and another draw filled with players whose countries have deeper coaching systems, stronger development pipelines, and far more experience at tour level. Against that background, a Filipino player reaching the top 30 is not just a personal achievement. It disrupts assumptions about where elite tennis players are supposed to come from. That is why Filipino fans can experience her rise collectively. They are not imagining that they hit the shots or win the matches for her. They are responding to the fact that her success places their country inside a conversation where it has rarely held this much attention. The emotional exchange works both ways. Alex gives fans a reason to watch a sport that may previously have felt remote. The fans give each milestone a level of energy that extends far beyond the crowd inside the stadium. A magazine cover, becomes part of that exchange. It allows the public to celebrate the meaning of the journey without needing another turn result that day. The timing also strengthens the message. A cover released too early can feel like an attempt to manufacture inevitability. It asks the audience to believe in a destination before the athlete has traveled enough of the road. This cover arrived after Alex had already entered a new competitive tier that made the feature feel less like prediction and more like recognition. The homecoming theme added another layer. She was not simply appearing in a fashion publication between tournaments. She was being received by a home audience that had watched her identity become increasingly international. That produces a fascinating tension. To succeed, Alex has to spend much of her career outside the Philippines. Her profession demands travel, distance, and constant adjustment. Yet every breakthrough can deepen the connection at home. The farther the career travels, the more symbolic the return becomes. That is part of why fans responded so strongly. The cover closed the distance between the global athlete and the national audience. For a moment, the player seen competing around the world was physically and culturally back home. This is how crossover influence begins. Not when an athlete suddenly becomes famous for something unrelated to sports, but when athletic credibility starts carrying meaning into other spaces. Serena Williams built cultural power far beyond tennis. Naomi Osaka connected global sport with identity, fashion, business, and public conversations about mental health. Coco Gauff has become compelling not only because of her results, but because audiences recognize intelligence, personality, and generational confidence in her public presence. Alex is not being placed beside those players as an equal in achievement or international scale. That comparison would be premature. The useful comparison is the mechanism. Performance opens the door. Personality makes people stay. Representation gives the audience a personal stake in what happens next. Alex is beginning to operate at the intersection of all three that creates commercial value. But commercial value is not the most interesting part. The deeper change is that her identity is becoming durable enough to survive beyond a single result. A loss will not immediately erase the connection. A difficult tournament will not make the public forget why she matters. That emotional durability is one of the clearest signs that an athlete is becoming a cultural figure. But there is a price. Once fans invest national meaning in a player, ordinary career fluctuations can become emotionally exaggerated. A good week may be treated like the beginning of a new era. A bad week may be treated like evidence that something has gone wrong. Every decision becomes visible. Scheduling, coaching, body language, tournament selection, even silence can be interpreted. This is where celebration can quietly become pressure. Alex is only 21. She is still developing technically, physically, and strategically. Being ranked inside the top 30 does not mean the process is finished. It means the next stage becomes harder. Opponents now have more footage. Coaches can identify patterns. Expectations rise faster than rankings. The cover therefore represents two realities at once. It shows that Eala has gained a level of influence Philippine tennis has rarely seen. It also shows that she is entering a phase where the public image may begin moving faster than the athlete's natural development. That tension will define what comes next because becoming visible is one challenge. Learning how to remain yourself while millions of people project meaning onto that visibility is another. That is now the real test. Not whether Eala can create another headline. Not whether another fashion feature can generate excitement. The question is whether she can turn this new level of attention into something that strengthens the career instead of complicating it. The answer will still be decided in places far less glamorous than a magazine studio, on practice courts, inside recovery rooms, during long travel days, and in early round matches where there is no emotional homecoming, no carefully controlled lighting, and no guarantee that the crowd is on her side. That is the reality of professional tennis. Visibility can change in a single week. Establishing yourself takes much longer. Now that Alex is inside the top 30, opponents will prepare for her differently. Her matches provide more data, her preferred patterns become easier to identify. Coaches can study where she serves under pressure, how she handles depth to the backhand, and whether she gives up court position when rallies become more physical. Success removes the advantage of surprise. The next phase will demand adjustment. She may need more variety in certain matchups, better protection of the second serve, greater efficiency when closing service games, smarter management of her schedule, when the calendar becomes physically demanding. Those details will matter more than any public narrative. A breakthrough proves that a player can reach the level. Consistency proves that she can live there. That is the difference, Alex. Now close, and it will not happen in a straight line. Even elite players experience early losses, injuries, confidence dips, and stretches where the game feels less reliable. Development at this level is rarely a clean upward climb. That is something fans may need to remember as her profile grows. The more Alex becomes a symbol, the easier it will be to treat every result as a statement about her entire future. That would be a mistake. One loss does not erase her progress. One strong tournament does not guarantee permanent success. The career will be decided by what she builds across months and seasons, not by the emotional temperature surrounding 1 week. The Metro cover can help if the attention is managed well. A larger platform can attract sponsors and commercial partners. In an individual sport, that support can create real competitive advantages. It can help fund an experienced team, better recovery, stronger preparation, and more freedom to plan around development rather than immediate financial pressure. But outside opportunities have to remain organized around the tennis. The danger is not fame itself. The danger is losing control of the schedule, the message, or the energy required to compete. The strongest crossover athletes understand that media attention is a tool. It can amplify a career, but it cannot become the career. Alex does not need to reject the opportunities now appearing around her. She needs to make sure they serve the player she is still becoming. There is also a larger opportunity for Philippine tennis. The impact of a visible athlete is not limited to inspiration. Visibility can change behavior. Children may ask for a racket because they recognize Alex. Parents may begin to view tennis as more than a recreational activity. Sponsors may see an audience that was previously difficult to measure. Young Filipino players may stop treating the professional tour as a world available only to athletes from traditional tennis nations. None of that guarantees a national tennis boom. One athlete cannot build courts, train coaches, create development programs, or solve structural limitations alone. But one athlete can change what people believe is possible. That is often where change begins. Alex should not be forced to carry the entire future of the sport on her shoulders. National pride can be energizing, but it can also become unfair when the public expects one young woman to validate an entire system every time she plays. She is allowed to develop. She is allowed to lose. She is allowed to make decisions for her own career rather than turning every tournament into a referendum on Philippine tennis. That distinction matters because representation is most powerful when it remains human. Fans connect with Alex not because she is an invincible symbol. They connect with her because they have seen the difficulty of the path and recognize what it takes to keep moving forward. That is why the Metro cover carries weight. Not because the clothes were expensive, not because the photographs were polished, not because appearing on a magazine automatically proves cultural importance. The cover matters because it froze a transition the audience had already begun to feel. Eala had spent years being discussed as the future. The image presented her as part of the present. It showed an athlete whose influence had become large enough to move from tournament coverage into mainstream culture without leaving her competitive identity behind. That is the central point. Metro did not create her significance. The magazine recognized that her significance was no longer confined to a tennis court. The next results will determine how far the sporting journey goes. The next seasons will reveal whether she can stay near the top, keep evolving, and manage the weight of expectation. But the cultural shift has already started. People now see Alex as more than a player whose score they check. They see confidence, representation, possibility, and a version of Filipino excellence that can stand comfortably under global attention. So when an athlete appears outside her sport, do not look only at the image. Look at the journey that gave the image its meaning. Look at the people who see themselves reflected in it, and look at whether the attention is being used to build something that can last. A magazine cover can capture a moment. It cannot guarantee the future, but sometimes it tells you that the future everyone once talked about has already begun.